Okay, so today I'm going, let's see if I can try to shuffle this over. I'm a little lagging on the setup here because something was a little different with it today. So anyways, so I'm thinking today I'm going to work on, continue with my chord stuff because I want to practice my, my naming conventions and then the shapes and to be able to name basically the shapes. So I'm thinking we'll go through the standard like bar chords, but this time on the top string, but instead of walking through a scale position, like position 1, we'll do what we did yesterday, but this time from the top string starting maybe here, and then make our normal bar chords, which will help us to, practice the bar chord, and then do all the variations, see if we can do the variations on the standard bar chords, which I call the lean forward chords, the caged chords, if you want to call it that way, but then also work on the naming convention to pull in not just the 1, 3, 5 from a scale degree, but the 7, the 9, the 11, the 13, and then think about what those names mean, and then also think about what I think the more best or better naming convention would be, which would be to name it by the nodal point and think about multiple ways to kind of name it. And the more I look at this, by the way, I'm thinking, it honestly drives me crazy. Like if you discuss this with like a chat bot, like a chat GTP or something, then I think it'll also basically tell you that the current system is not the most efficient system, right? It's not just you. It's like something's not quite, like it's not as, like I got a comment yesterday, for example, that said, I didn't know music had math in it or something like that, right? And it's like, and I get that. I'm not trying to say, but I'm just saying that's like someone saying that I didn't know accounting had math in it, right? Because it's being taught without math or something somehow. It's not like it's hard math, but I mean the idea that music doesn't have math in it is like something went wrong here. Something has gone terribly wrong. Like if we trimmed down the music to its essence of how it's constructed and made it as clean as possible, then the people that would be attracted to music in grade school, the kids, would not be like just the band members or like drama type people, or it would be the science people. If your system isn't attracting from a musical system kids, and if we have a system where we're not teaching it in grade school except as a side topic, it's not being used to teach math or spatial visualization, and it's not being attractive to the engineer type kids, the people that like numbers, as well as others, and it's not being, then we're doing it wrong. There's something wrong, Like Pythagoras would be ashamed of us for what we've done to this. This needs to be this needs to be trimmed down, and then we got to put it, and then we've got to be putting it into the school system. So that's what to teach kids. It should be teaching, math with the music. Okay, I know that's patriarchal these days, and so I'm just saying, if the names that I'm coming up with here, I think are just the logical names. I mean, it's not like I'm inventing anything. It's just so if anybody wants to do, I recommend doing the same thing here. Just take the worksheets and try to make your own presentations maybe, or live streams, or just practice while talking so that you can talk out the thing and visualize the map, kind of gamify the process. And then I'm thinking, so you don't need my permission to use any of these terms or anything like modal ranges if they seem to make sense to you, which again, if you're thinking straight, it would, right? I feel like it's just obvious. So go ahead, and I mean, like I say, I would, anybody that wants to take this information and build this fretboard out in a software with a low or heavy string on top, with a computer software, and map out the thing in a way that I think is the most logical way, I think someone needs to do that, right? Someone needs to do that, you know, and then try to get it in the school system, right? So if anybody, so like I say, you don't need my permission if you want to use any terms that you haven't used before, because I'd like to just have the system be as clean as possible, and maybe other people could try to get it into schools and stuff so they teach it with math. That would be cool, you know, because, and maybe you're better at doing that. Maybe when you tell someone, maybe we should do this, they're not like, when I talk to the bureaucratic people, is it just me? Like, you talk to the bureaucratic people and they're like, and you're like, can you see any reason why what I'm saying doesn't make sense? And they're like, no. So are you going to do it? And they're like, no. Why? Because we don't like you. And so we're going to do the exact opposite. And it's like, well, you're going to do but you're going to drive everyone crazy if you do that. You're going to say 2 + 2 is 3? Yes. Why? Because we don't like you. And it's like, what? Then you get it, but you can't just, right? So that's what I'm, so what I'm saying is, like, if anybody thinks that makes sense, you know, I feel like, you know, we should be trying to trim everything down to as clean as possible, and then teach it in grade school. That's like an overarching objective. And I have all of this stuff, by the way. I'm making it here. I have it in a course, you know, but the fretboard isn't quite finalized yet. But all the other worksheets are housed there. I could put them up somewhere else too, but I mean, you know, anyway, that's my general thought process. All right. So I'm going to say that let's start on the Phrygian here. I'm just going to build out just normal chords for my practice session. I'm going to change my worksheet where we have the first half of the worksheet. Each fret is on two sides here. The first half is going to be the points, which are going to be the note points or the nodal points, and the second half is going to be the distance. So I'm going to, so what I'm going to do is then you could change the perspective from the point with this little thing you can't see down here, but I'm gonna work on the Phrygian, so I could put it on the Ionian. So now the second half is the Ionian. And by the way, I've mapped this out now so I can see the whole system by node, we can see it by note, and we can also name the whole thing by color. So I'm gonna try in the future, my goal is to go through this and name the whole thing in the multiple different ways that it can be named from, right? I can name it by the color system, which I have an absolute color system. I can name it by the intervals. I can name it by the modal ranges. I can name it by modal distance chords, because it's just a map and we're just telling the directions on the map. All right, and then if I change this back, we're going to be on the Phrygian. So if I change it back to a Phrygian, then now we're going to measure everything from here. So this is the Phrygian node. It's note number 8, and the distance is a perfect first, which I would like to call, it's 0 notes away from the Phrygian node, which would be a 0th modal half step, right? And we'll talk about those terms later. Okay, so if I make a 3-note chord, our normal convention is to name the point by note and then find the last note in the chord, which like usually is the 7, the 9, but if it's a triad, it's the 5th, right? So we're looking for the scale degree of the 5th is the last, that names us the distance to get to the last note in the chord. Now a 5th is off by 1 from normal measurement standpoints for what I would call modal half steps. So a 5 minus 1 is 4, meaning it's 4 modal half steps up from the node we're on, which is the Phrygian, which has a natural number 3. So if I divide that by 2, it's 2, which would be 2 what I call modal whole steps up from the Phrygian. That's why I would name the chord a Phrygian 2 modal whole step chord, or a 3-note Phrygian chord, or you can call it a Phrygian E chord if you want to be redundant, but I already know the collection of notes that I'm in, the collection of notes around the C. right? So I could say, and so I know that's going to be a minor chord because it's a Phrygian, and a Phrygian is a minor mode. Therefore, it's going to have a minor third to it. But I don't need to say that because it's a Phrygian. That you should know. We should know that by it being the Phrygian. We're starting from the Phrygian continent, which has a distance to the third, which has the same distance as the Aeolian, which is traditionally called a minor distance. Okay, so let me pull this down a little bit. Okay, so that's cool. All right, so that means that if I go 4 up from here, it's 4 plus 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's going to be right here. So it's right there. Boom. So we have a distance then in notes. There's 5 distance between the strings. So there's a distance of 5, 6, 7 when you get out to here. Okay. and then that's going to be so that's going to be a 7 note away from the Phrygian node, 4th modal half step, which we call a perfect 5th. And then how do I, and so I can name that range. I can also name the chord. I'm sorry, I'm kind of babbling. I'm warming up here. I'll get my rhythm down soon in my language, I think, hopefully. But it's going to be, I can name that chord by point too, as well, if we think about it by the nodal point instead of the note point. In other words, it's going to be a Nashville number system 3/7 modal range chord, or a PN modal range chord, a Phrygian Locrian modal range chord, a Phryg Loc modal range chord, meaning those are going to be the endpoints of the chord. Well, how do I get the middle points? You just take every whole step, in other words, every other modal half step, not whole step, but modal whole step, from the 3. So 3, 4, 5 is going to give us to the node of the 5. That's going to be this one right here, which has a distance away of 2 modal whole steps, which is a 3rd scale degree. So that's why I would call it a 3 note away from the Phrygian 2nd modal whole step, 2 modal 2nd modal half step, 2 modal half steps, which would be the 3rd scale degree, which we call a minor 3rd. Okay, and then I could repeat this over here so that we have then the repeat over there, and then this repeats down here, so I can bar this off. But that's the idea of it. That gives us our bar chord that looks like this, which is in essence just the E minor bar chord, which is here, which always kind of threw me off because usually I think of bar chords as moving up, like you move the bar chord up to an A minor. But here we're moving the bar chord down. So E minor, you're right, E minor, and then you kind of move it like these fingers are moving up, but the bar would be here, right? So the bar would be here. Well, wait, no, you're moving it up. You're moving it up one. It's still moving up. It still kind of makes me it's kind of weird. The F1 kind of trips me up for some reason back here. Anyways, but it's a bar chord. so then it's like, okay, well, what if I wanted to make a 7 chord? Well, then we usually name it by the distance to the last note, and I know it's going to be then typically if it's in the key of the 7 note collection around the Ionian, or in other words, in the Phrygian modal set, then it's going to be a minor system. And if I add the 7th from a scale degree standpoint, it would be then a minor 7, which would be an 11 note away minor 7, right? Is the general idea. And I call it a minor 7 chord, but that's not very specific. I'd rather call it a Phrygian chord of some kind, right? A Phrygian chord of some kind. And if it's a 7 note away distance in scale degrees, it's off by 1. It's actually 6 modal half steps up, meaning I can take 3 plus 6 to get there from a distance perspective. And 6 divided by 2 would mean that it's going to be 3 modal whole steps up, which is what I would like to name the chord. It would be a Phrygian 3 modal whole step chord, meaning I'm naming the point we're starting on and the distance in the collection of 7 notes, which is in order, and you get to the last, and you just go up to the last note, right? And so that's going to be then 6 plus 3 is 9, and you have to get it into the local distance around 7 because it goes around in a circle. So 9 minus 7 is 2. So I'm looking for a 2 which is a Dorian. So I could just drop that back. We've seen this shape or similar shape before. We can just remove this. It's beautifully laid out on the guitar because I can just remove this double, which I had two of these, and just pick up then this one, which is going to be the Dorian. So now that's going to be a 10 note away from the Phrygian node, 6th modal half step, which would be the 7th scale degree, which we call a minor 7. So notice I can name this chord by nodes, which again would be really useful, wouldn't it? Like I could say, look, the Phrygian 3 modal whole step chord, or in other words, the Phrygian 7th chord or minor 7th has the Phrygian in it. It's got the Mixolydian in it, and then it's got the Locrian in it, and then it's got the Dorian in that order, right? That would be how you can name the actual continents, the disc that you need to hold down if you use this convention to name it, right? And then you could say, okay, I can also name it instead of the point I'm on and then distance, I can name it by just the point, the 2 end points of the range, meaning I name it from the 3-5 modal range chord. It's a modal range chord. It's a PX modal range chord. It's a Phrygian Mixolydian modal range chord, a Phryg mix modal range chord, or from a color system, it's the sky blue magenta, the sky blue magenta chord, right? And then how do you get there? Well, you just start on the one you're at, the 3, and you take every other modal half step, which I would call a modal whole step, until you get to the 5. So 3, 4, so wait a second. Hold on, something funny happened here. Is that right? Until you get to the 2. Yeah. So 3, 4, 5 would be the Mixolydian. 5, 6, 7, pick it up if you can, the Locrian. 7, around the horn, because there's there's a circle. 7, 1, 2 is the 2. And then you stop there because that's the end of the range. And I told you the distance from one to the other, you just stop every other house as you go around the block until you get to the Dorian house. Right? And so then you just, okay. So then you just lift this pinky up functionally. I keep on complaining my fingernails are too long and then I don't cut them. My fingernails are too long. I can't play it right. I'm not going to cut it live. I can't, that people might think that's gross or that I'm trying to do something weird or something. I don't want to attract any weird viewers as I try to cut my fingernails. Anyway, so let's say we go from we add the 9. So we're going to add the 9. Okay. So a 9 chord is usually just saying the distance from the Phrygian node. So I believe that would be like from the Phrygian node, like a minor 9, right? Is that a minor 9 chord? Phrygian, but I'd rather call it a Phrygian chord. And the 9 then is equivalent to the 2 that we skipped, right? So I'm just gonna, so we could see what we're gonna pick up then is the 9 is the distance. It's off by 1. You could say it's a distance of 8. But if you want the local distance, I could take 8 minus 7, which is 1, or I can say that the 9 is actually equivalent in essence to the 2, and the 2 is off by 1 as well. So 2 minus 1 is 1. So it's a distance of modal half steps of 1. 1 plus 3. The Phrygian that we're on is 4, so we're looking for a destination of a 4, which is the Lydian. So I'm looking for Lydian. Looking for Lydian. All right, that's going to be right there. So I could drop the 7. I could pick it up down here. I could say like maybe I can pick that up and then pick it up down here, but that's too hard. Like, and plus it's my pinky that has the fingernail that's messed up. So I'm going to have to abandon the 7 and pick up this one. And so that's okay. So I'm still going to define it that way. And so I'd like to say that we're picking up, the 9, which is 8 modal half steps up, what would I call that chord? I would call it 8 divided by 2 means it's 4 modal whole steps up. So I would call it a Phrygian 4 modal whole step, because that's the distance to go from the Phrygian to the last note in the range, which if you count it out will get you to the Lydian. Or I could define it by the 2 endpoints and you can figure out the distance. I can call it a PY modal range chord, a 3-4 modal range chord, a Phrygian Lydian modal range chord, a Phryg Lyd modal range chord. And then you can just say, okay, well, how do I get there? Well, the Phrygian's the 3, and then you go 3, you take every other modal whole step. So 3, 4, 5 would be the Mixolydian, 5, 6, 7 is the Locrian, 7 around the horn, 1, 2 is the Dorian, but we had to drop that one. We had to abandon that one. That's okay. We're still going to call it the same name because we have this last one in there that we're naming it by, and then we pick up the last one, which is 2, 3, 4 with the Lydian right there. Okay, so that would be here, here, and then here. Oh, oh. That's going to be quite tensiony, obviously, because it's got between these two, it's got that, of course, that 6 note away distance of a flat 5, and it's got also right here is that distance right there is obviously quite tensiony as well, because it's right next to the root. It's only a chromatic step away, so that's going to be quite. Ooh. All right. Let's go back to this one, kind of a normal shape, and so that's going to be. Well, let's keep it there for now. So that's going to be the 9. What if I want an 11 chord of some chord? So it would be like a Phrygian chord with an 11. So it would be some kind of, I believe, like a minor 11 chord, because the 11 is equivalent to the 4, right? So, but from a distance standpoint, from the Phrygian node, it would be a Phrygian chord where you're picking up the distance of the 11 scale degree, which I know would be 10 modal half steps up. So I could take 3 plus 10, but I can also say, well, I could bring the 10 back down to the local distance. 10 minus 7 is 3. And so I could take a distance of 3 plus 3 would get me there. So I'm looking for the 6, which would be the Aeolian, like right here. So maybe I have to drop the Mixolydian and pick up the Aeolian, right? So then what would I call that? Well, if I pick up the 11, the other way you could do the math there, and yes, I'm doing the math. You patriarchal, okay, I know. I'm horrible. I do math all the time. I do it in secret though, so no one, so I sneak away and do my patriarchal math. I'm gonna say, but if you do it 11, if it's an 11 note away minus what? Well, you could say the 11 is equivalent to the 4, all right? And so and from a scale degree would be the local distance, and 4 minus 1 would be 3. So once again, you get a distance of 3. You can also say that if it's 11 note away minus 1, that would be a distance of 10. So what would I call the chord? Well, you can call it 10 divided by 2 would be the modal whole steps. I'd like to call it a Phrygian 5 modal whole step chord. So Phrygian 5 modal whole step chord, which means it would be a 6-note Phrygian chord if we were to add all of the steps from this node up until we get to the last node. Or of course you can call it by range, just labeling the end distances, which is a 3-6 modal range, a PA modal range, a Phrygian Aeolian modal range, a Phryg Ao modal range. How do you get there? Well, you just start from the Phrygian and you count up every other modal half step, or which would be by definition each modal whole step, until you get to the 6 or the Aeolian. So 3, 4, 5 would be here, but we had to abandon that one. Sorry, Mixolydian. 5, 6, 7 is the Locrian. 7, 8, 9, grab it if you can. And 9, wait a sec, hold on. 7, and then 1, 2, we had to abandon that one too, the Dorian. 2, 3, 4, we could grab that, but we might not want to because that's going to be tensiony. 4, and then 5, 6, and there's the end, and then you stop there. Okay. So what if I did, like, it's possible to grab that one. Don't do that often. So I could do that and still get that tensiony bit. But I could bring this back here and say, well, let's drop that one and pick up a repeat of this, or I can grab the 7 because that's a repeat there, or I can toggle between the two. So now I'm going to bar that one off. That's kind of cool. Let's add then the 13. Finally, the 13, the 1, 3. So if I add the 13, then that's going to be some kind of minor modal 13. It's equivalent to the 6 from a scale degree standpoint. So it would be 13. So it'd be like some kind of minor 13. I would say, right? Normally, I'll go over the normal chord conventions. I get mixed up. So I don't want to. Anyway, but if I'm adding the 13, I could say, well, 13 minus 1 means it's going to be a distance of 12 modal half steps up from the Phrygian to get to the end point, which I can bring the local distance, 12 minus 7, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 is 5. So I could count up from 5. I can also get there by saying, well, if you're adding the 13, that's equivalent to the local scale degree of 6, which is off by 1, which would give you 5. So 5 would be the modal half steps plus the 3, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 is outside or around the circle. It's above 7. So 8 minus 7 is 1. I'm looking for the Ionian. The 1, Nashville num, Burr system. All right, so let's pick this one. Let's push this one out here because I actually have another of those Locrians down here. So there is that. So what would I call that chord? I'd like to say, well, if you're adding the 13, then it's actually 12 modal half steps up, which means it's going to be 12 divided by 2, or 6 modal whole steps up. So I'd like to call it a Phrygian 6 modal whole step chord, which means it's a 7-note Phrygian chord if you were to add all of the notes in order, modal whole step to modal whole step, if you want to call it that way as well. But I think but if you call it a Phrygian 6 modal whole step chord, that gives you the distance. You can also name it by the endpoints. So it's a 3-1 modal range chord. It's a Phrygian Ionian modal range chord, a PI modal range chord, a Phryg Ion modal range chord. From a color system, it's a sky blue, yellow, green modal range chord. How do you know all the other notes? Well, you just start on the Phrygian and you count every other modal half step, which is by definition every modal whole step. So that's going to be 3, 4, 5, but we abandoned the 5, 5, 6, 7, but we abandoned the 7, but we have another one down here, so we're cool with that. And then if we bar it off, and then 7, 8, 7 around the horn, 1, 2. We picked up the 2 now. 2, 3, 4 is going to give us this one. 4, 5, 6 is here, and then 6, 7, 1 finally on the Ionian. So something like that, I feel like. So now I can just grab this and I can be out here, and the point is that this is the one, this is the new bit right there, and then it's going to be tough to grab that one. My fingernails are getting, is that right? I think so, yeah. Could I do anything with this finger? I could toggle. Let's move up to the next one. I'm spending way too much time on one thing here. Let's move up to the Lydian, and now we'll do the same thing from the Lydian's perspective. So now all of the second side of my worksheet is tied to the Phrygian. Now I want to tie it to the Lydian. Well, I've got a beautiful toggle thing here because I made the worksheet in Excel with math, and it's beautiful. I'm going to make this a Lydian now. And so now I can see it from the perspective of the Lydian, and I have an absolute color system that maps everything, so I can name it by color even. I can even name it by color. I can name, anyway. Let's do a joke first. Quick joke before we move on. Joke practice. All right, again, I tried to do this myself, and then I asked ChatGPT to make it better. But I feel like ChatGPT just isn't getting my vibe, man. It's not like I need to train my AI better. Chat 5 just doesn't get me. I think it's Chat 5. Chat 4 would have understood, but I'm trying to move on to Chat 5 because Chat 4 is going to die, and I don't want to, so I have to move on. It's sad. Anyway. I really need to get this. I've got this music thing, this problem that the whole musical system needs to be redesigned and taught to children using math like Pythagoras would have wanted. And I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to get this off my chest. I need to get this off my chest. But it's difficult because it seems to be attached to my chest like a nipple ring, you know? A nipple ring, and I don't know how to unclasp it. So the only way to get it off my chest is the painful process of just tearing it off my chest. The agony of the process probably being why you all agreed to help to get it off my chest is probably what's happening here. Man, I never understood those nipple rings. I generally don't like much about my nipples. I mean, there's an old saying, you can't permanently abolish the hair from a hairy nipple, but you can shave it. Take comfort. You can shave it. Okay, let me try it again. Better delivery. because that's what my job here, because pretty soon chat's going to take my joke writing ability. But still, I don't think chat's up to par yet, because it doesn't know how to write for me, man. It doesn't know how to write for me. I mean, it can kind of like write jokes, but it can't, I need to, anyway, let's try it again. This dang music theory thing is complicated to the point where kids, you've got to be like in a band, or like kind of, or like in the band class or something, and that should be how it is. It should be like science kids would be interested in it, because it's all spatial visualization, and I've really got to get this off my chest, for crying out loud, because it's crazy. Pythagoras would be ashamed, but it's difficult to get it off my chest because it seems to be attached like a nipple ring. A nipple ring I don't know how to unclasp. So the only way to get it off my chest is this painful process of just tearing it out. The agony of the process probably being why you all agreed to help get this thing off my chest, I'm thinking. But anyway, man, I never understood those nipple rings. I generally don't like thinking about my nipples much in the first place. I mean, there's an old saying, you can't permanently abolish hair from a hairy nipple, but you can shave it. Take comfort, you can shave. Okay, so this is what chat did to it. I'll show you what chat, maybe I just don't deliver it right. So I tried to say, chat, make that more funny. And chat was like, okay, I really want to get this off my chest, but it's difficult because it seems to be attached like a nipple ring. Man, I never understood nipple rings. I don't even like thinking about my nipples. I try to forget they exist. I don't need to accessorize them. See, they're using words, the big word. That's not a big word, but that's not a big word. It's a big word for me, okay? It's a big word, and I don't use it much. Anyway, chat's trying to show off. Okay. There's an old saying my grandma used to mutter, usually after too much whiskey, you can't permanently abolish hair from a hairy nipple, but you can shave it. Words to live by. Take comfort, my friends, you can always shave it, but beware, like weeds or ex-girlfriends, it always grows back. Okay. See, I don't know. I feel like my rendition, I just think my writing's better still. I'll keep working with chat. I think chat's got potential, but it's just not up to par yet. I'm gonna keep trying. I'm not giving up on him yet, but he needs to practice. Okay, let's go to the Lydian. So if we have a 3-note, we're going to say a 3-note triad from the Lydian. So the end point of a triad is the 5th, right? We name every other chord by the end point typically, but we just say a triad is a triad, and we just label the starting point and say it's 3 notes, which you just assume from a scale degree is a 1, 3, 5, which are all off by 1. It should be 0 modal half steps, 2 modal half steps, Anyway, so the end of it, though, is going to be the 5, the 5th, which means that it's going to be 4 modal half steps up because all the scale degrees are off by 1. So how do you get there? Well, you could go from, if I'm on the Lydian, you just go up 4 modal half steps. So that'd be 4 plus 4, which would be 8. The local distance would be in the realm of 7, so 8 minus 7 is 1. That would be the Ionian, baby. The Ionian. So what would I like to call this? Well, the endpoint is the endpoint is a 5th minus 1 is 4 away. So 4 divided by 2 means that it's actually 2 modal whole steps away. So I think the most logical name for this chord would be a Lydian 2 modal whole step chord, telling you the point that we're on and the distance. And the most efficient term, modal whole steps, you just take every other note in the collection of 7 notes until you get there. And then you figure out the point. Or you can label it by the end points, meaning it would be a 4-1 modal range, a YI modal range. It would be a Lydian Ionian modal range, a Lyd mid modal range chord, or by color, a blue, yellow, green modal range chord. All right, well, what's going to be the notes in the middle? Well, you just go from the 4 plus every other modal half step, which would be by definition every modal whole step, 4, 5, 6. And 6 would be the Aeolian. So right there, those are the 3 notes. I can double this note up, which is going to be an octave of this one. And then I can bar these 2 off, and they would be cool because that one's that one, and that one's that one. So that's fine too. But if I don't get down to there, that's all right with the bar. If the bar's not tight enough to get all the way down. Oh my goodness. Did I do the whole thing off by 1 last time? I did. I did the whole Phrygian. Oh my God. As though it was position 1. Man, that's terrible. Totally messed up. I bet someone probably told me in the comments I should probably look at the comments. Did I really do that? I put everything as though the open position when I should have been on fret 1. Man, that's frustrating. All right, well, let's just do it from fret 1. Let's do the whole thing again, the proper way. And let's do it this way, so. Boom. All right, and let's try to do it quickly, because we already did this one. Did this one the wrong way. It should be from the Lydian. Man, that's so annoying. Okay, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. I'm going to keep it rolling. So we're going to say it's going to be the Lydian so we're going to say Lydian, and let's add another one. So now we're going to go it'll be adding the 7. So now we're going to be adding the 7 for the Lydian, which now is so what did I do? Now I'm still kind of combobulated on what I did. I did this whole thing as though it was from the Phrygian. So that would be like as though I moved the whole shape up to 1. So I was playing I mapped this whole thing out as though we were in the Phrygian on the 1st fret. So I could adjust my fretboard just to look at that for a second, because that would be like I shifted the whole thing up with my collection of notes. So that would be like I'm on the collection of notes around the C, which is note number 4. Let's just to show the power of the fretboard, since I've totally messed up. You totally messed up, man. All right, let's make this a 5. The power of the fretboard. I'm going to change this to a 5, just to see what we actually kind of mapped out there. So now that would have been the proper mapping, right? So this would have been, and then this would have been a Phrygian. Okay. So what I should have done, so everything I mapped out was okay from, you lied to me. I did not lie. It was true from a certain point of view. It's like Luke Skywalker's. No, you lied. You were wrong. No, you just don't get it. What I was doing was true from anyway. So we're gonna say, you could have mapped that whole thing out that we did from this way. It's just we would have been in a different collection of notes, where the fret 1 would have been the Phrygian, which would be the 7-note collection around the C sharp note. All right, man, that's embarrassing. I'm gonna have to. Let's bring it back. We'll just keep it rolling. But look how cool the fretboard is. I'm going to bring it back to the 4 collection of notes. Okay. Let's do it again. So now we're going to do it here, the same position, but now we're going to look at the collection of notes. Now we're going to look at the collection of notes from the proper perspective of the Lydian. You totally lied to me. It wasn't a lie. It was true from a certain point. Bull crap. Bull crap. All right. All right. Let's try it again. So a 3-note triad from the Lydian. So we did that, and then I'm gonna add I'm gonna add I'm gonna add the 5th note, which is a 7. So I'm gonna add a 7, and so we're on the Phrygian. So the 7 is going to be, you would expect a Phrygian being a major chord, it would be a major Phrygian, a major 7, right? Which would be an 11 note away major 7. We would expect. So that means if I'm going to the 7, it's going to be 7 from a scale degree. 7 minus 1 would be 6 modal half steps up. So that would be 4 plus 6, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I want to bring it to the local distance under 7. 10 minus 7, 7, 8, 9, 10 is 3. So we bring it back to here. You can see this shape is slightly different than what we looked at before, because now the 7 is a distance of 11 notes away, which would be a major 7 from a normal scale degree standpoint, instead of 10 notes away, minor 7. Okay, so what would I call that? Then I would say we could call that by distance of a chord. It would be a YP modal range, a 4/3 modal range, a lid fridge modal range, a blue to a sky blue modal range chord, and you just go 4, take every other modal half step. 4, 5, 6 would be the Aeolian, 6, 7, and then 1 Ionian. 1, 2, 3 gets you to the Phrygian. Okay, so then it would be, is that right? Oh, not like that. That would be the minor. All right, let's say we add another one. We're gonna say we're adding the 7, 7, 9. So now we're gonna add the 9. So the 9 from a distance standpoint would be 9 minus 1 would be 8. The local distance would be 8 minus 7 to bring it down to 1 distance away from the Lydian node. 4 plus 1 would be 5. So I'd be looking for the Mixolydian. So Mixolydian, we have one out here. Let's move this one. That one's tough to grab. So let's see, I could grab this one down here. That's going to be a little bit difficult. So am I on the wrong spot again? Oh, God. All right, so this is going to be here. And then, like, wait a sec. I'm getting all discombobulated now. Boom, 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 boom. My fingernail isn't gonna let me get that one. There's one up here. I can toggle. I'm gonna practice my fingering for a bit. I think I've lost it on the thing. We'll try it again tomorrow. I'll try to recoup what the time we have lost in the errors of the process tomorrow. I'll get better. I'll get better at it. Okay.